Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Denver Rich. I would like to first say hello. Secondly, say hello to my classmates. Say hello to my instructor. Instructor, classmates, I have a very serious concern that I'd like to bring to you today. This would be a concern of a law that may pass here in the very near future that had once already been decided by our Supreme Court. This law is called Roe v. Wade. Now, quite a few of you may be familiar with that law. That is the woman's right to do with her body as she pleases. Now, I'm not going to take a lot of your time up, okay? The opposing view of this would be the Right to Life Act. It's not actually an act per se, but people have gotten behind it because they believe that if a child is conceived, it should be brought to full term. But what they fail to realize is that there are certain sets of circumstances that supersede that thought process. Back in the 30s, when the Depression hit, a lot of individuals, families, and husbands and wives decided that they couldn't afford to have a child. So they went and found some of the most crude methods to have either a miscarriage, an abortion of some sort. In one case I read where there was a coat hanger involved. I don't know if you can imagine someone sticking a piece of metal in your body in one of the most sensitive places in your body, twisting, turning, and then yanking. I mean, can you imagine the pain and the agony of that? I don't know. I know I couldn't sustain it. Now, there was also another method. This method involved them shooting some form of poison. I'm not certain of the type of poison that this was, but it would basically make the woman hemorrhage and destroy the pregnancy. And in some cases, it would render the women sterile for the rest of their lives. Now, we move forward a little bit, 1973 to be exact, where a young woman decided that she would take this consideration to court. She lived in Texas. And in Texas, it was against the law to have an abortion. So she went from the state court, which said no, she couldn't do it, but she had the option to take it to a higher court. So she took it to a higher court. That would be our Supreme Court. In 1973, they said, okay, a woman has a right to do so. It's her body. Now, with that being said, let's consider everything that entails. One, the woman had the right to decide what to do with her body. Her husband could no longer tell her to either have the baby or whatever. The next was, at one point, if the woman had been raped back in the 30s, and the child was viable and would come to fruition, what were her options then? Consider that. You have to think of the whole spectrum here, because the laws that were put together by a group of men saying, okay, this is what we want. Back when the Constitution was written, and this is why they allowed the Roe v. Wade decision to go through was Justice Scalia stated that there were no provisions in the Constitution that said or even addressed this subject. So a few of them got together and said, okay, let them have it. Now, you also have to remember, this was around the 70s when the women were starting to gain their rights and pull their rights together and demand their rights. Okay? After the 60s and the bra burning and thing of that nature, they got serious and decided, okay, well, we need to get our rights written down in law. I.e., one of those rights was Roe versus Wade. Now, I want to give you a little background here on some of the things that took place. Now, in 1930s, it says here that the number of abortions increased during the Great Depression. The Depression years made vivid the relationship between the economy and the reproduction. Imagine that. 30s, if you couldn't afford to have a child, what did you do? You got rid of the child. Now, I have, once again, I heard some gruesome stories. I've spoke to my wife. I've spoken to older women of the church, and I asked them their opinion on this. And it's a very complicated subject because it basically goes back to what that woman's moral fiber is about. Because consider this. If the woman wants to have it, even if she can't afford it, she's going to have it anyway, right? Exactly. If the woman sees it in her mind that she can't afford it, what's she going to do? But I digress. Let's move on. Now, I also wanted to bring to you something that I thought of that I will include in this course lecture here, and that is, if a man were to be able to have children, do you believe that this law would even matter? I don't think so. I really don't. Because when the Constitution was written, men couldn't have babies, so they didn't care. When the Constitution was written, there really wasn't slavery. So the Constitution, I bring this to your attention because the Constitution didn't cover a lot of things. But as our society moves further and further away from the original meaning of the Constitution, we start to add and subtract, move around and twist. Okay? I don't believe that the laws for that period can actually represent the situations that are going on today. Heck, they didn't even have the internet, right? But I also want to bring to your attention that as a woman, I'm sure that they feel by this recent political climate that the legislation that they're considering to overturn this is going to affect women in a great way. Because it's like taking 5 steps forward and then having all 5 steps taken away from you, but also having 5 more taken away. Can you comprehend that? See, because here's the thing. You gave her the right to do what she needed to do to control her particular situation, how many children she wanted, whatever. But Now, since one of the justices on the Supreme Court is retiring, and the president that's running the country now chooses to add another Supreme Court to that situation, another Supreme Court justice to it, and all of his political backing came from different, I would say, different ways from the norm that people think. Because you have to remember, they've been doing this for 30 years now, almost 40 years, right? But now all of a sudden, because someone was able to help someone's campaign, they now have the right to go back over this and say, well, they didn't get it right the first time. I don't believe that the Supreme Court should have the right or the ability to revisit something that they've already made a judgment on. It's been done. We've been living for it for decades now. But I digress. We're going to move on past that because I want to give you some actual stats here. Okay? And one of these stats is the fact that if Roe v. Wade is overturned, were you aware that it would fall to the different states to make their laws? So that means that if you live in, let's say, Nevada, and it's okay to have an abortion there, but you go down to Arizona and it's against the law to have an abortion, how does that work? Can they then turn around and say, hey, well, you had an abortion, we can arrest you? No, I don't think so. But now you got people coming from Arizona up to Nevada to have abortions. Or, California or wherever they're permitted at that time. Come on now. As a society, I don't believe that we should go backwards after making these leaps and bounds. And I don't believe that we should allow our lawmakers and the political environment of the time to dictate how your most basic human right can be dealt with. My name is Denver Rich. Once again, I thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I thank you for taking the time to reach out to me and let me know where I got it wrong. Because I'm not perfect. I'm only human, just like everyone else. My views and my opinions are what I go through. The shape of my world, the shape of your world may be different. But I would love to hear about it. I would love to sit down and have a healthy debate with you about it. Once again, my name is Denver Rich. I want to thank you. Please don't hesitate to reach out to my instructor. I want to thank her for the opportunity to learn how to do just what I'm doing right now, and that's to speak. I greatly appreciate you. To my classmates, thank you so much for tolerating my wobbliness to get to this point. You have been a great help, and I look forward to all of you graduating and going on with your life in a successful manner. You take care. Have a good day.